welcome back to I Got Board Game. I got board game. I am Ben.
John.
And today we have a pretty big announcement on Kickstarter. Basically, we are going to do a preview of a big Kickstarter that just started recently, and that will be Marvel Dice Throne. Marvel, everything Marvel nowadays. So this might depend on how much you actually enjoy Marvel stuff or how much you enjoy Dice Throne. And especially if you enjoy both, this will be great. So Dice Throne, to get started, is a game that came out a few years back, and I actually did back it from the beginning. So up to this point, it started with season 1 of Dice Throne. And so this was like the first season, and then they had another Kickstarter later for a bigger, more crazy produced second season. And then last they had Dice Throne Adventure, which is also very big, which took kind of all the Dice Throne characters they had before, put it into a more co-op adventure form of play. But originally, Dice Throne is a fighting board game, and we have reviewed some of those on this channel already, or talked about some of them, like BattleCon and Exceed, where it's kind of like a fighting game into a board game, card game format. Dice Throne doesn't aim to capture that video game feel, but it is still that kind of tense combat kind of board game. Ideally, I would say in a 1v1 setting, though they do have rules for multiple players. And so the general way it'll play, and you'll kind of see them lay out these details of the whole Dice Throne system on their Kickstarter page. But the general way it'll play is you'll basically just choose your character. Each character is an original character in their own Dice Throne world that Roxley Games has created. And you'll be the Shadow Thief or the Pyromancer or the Paladin. And each character has their own player board, which has different spaces indicating what abilities they can do, different kinds of attacks that do different damage, that get them certain tokens that will help power them up or let them do other abilities. And each character will have their own deck of cards, which you will be drawing from and using to ultimately do more damage or heal or defend. But ultimately, a lot of it will be how you use your dice in the game. It is called Dice Throne. And so the big mechanic with this, even with that player board of abilities and your deck of cards, are the custom dice each character has. And so on a player's turn, they'll be rolling these dice, Yahtzee style or King of Tokyo style, if you guys know those games, meaning they'll roll all the dice and choose which ones they want to keep, which results they like, and then re-roll the remaining ones, and they get to basically roll a total of 3 times. And after all those times, whatever results you have, those are the dice, the numbers, the symbols that you have to use. And what you're trying to do is get the results that activate a certain ability on your character's sheet, because they all need certain combinations, like a small straight will activate a certain attack, or a large straight will activate a different kind of attack. So you just need the combinations that match one of your abilities to do that attack during your turn. And so that's generally the way the game will go. You'll have your cards to help manipulate your dice rolling, and then you're going to roll, try to match to the ability you want to do, attack with that turn. Your opponent will get to roll their dice maybe to do a defense roll, depending on their defense ability. And you're going to go back and forth, kind of trying to whittle each other's life down, and whoever's the last one standing is the winner. And so it'll make much more sense when you see examples of these player boards and the decks and the custom dice. So with that little general idea of how Dice Throne plays overall, we'll see how it has been applied to Marvel, or basically putting Marvel characters into this gameplay system. And so we will share the Kickstarter page. And I remember when bringing this up with John, is like, should we do a preview of this game? Does it need more attention? It probably did not. It probably reached like, what was it, like 7,000 or 8,000 backers in the first day I told you about it.
Pretty much, something like that.
So, but I do find this exciting. This was when I was looking forward to launching on Kickstarter, just because I've been getting everything Dice Throne so far. And so, yeah. And so to see how they translate Marvel characters into this world in ways that hopefully are different from characters they've already made, that's kind of what I was curious about. And so going into this is Marvel Dice Throne. This season will have 8 characters that come with it if you back it, and which is kind of the standard for each season of the game so far, 8 new characters. And so going down, you can see the art style, which is done by, I believe the artist for the whole series is Manny Tremblay. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But yeah, he has a characteristic style that you'll kind of notice throughout the seasons, with how the characters kind of proportions, body shapes, features are like, but also the coloring to it. Like, I think he does a really good job of making things kind of that very colorful, but not gaudy, you know, but very kind of cool, kind of and vibrant looking. And so Marvel Dice Throne, which is also a big deal, right? Getting the license to do something Marvel nowadays. So yeah, Roxley Games with USAopoly. And so this is kind of how the player board looks like, which, and we'll see more specific ones later down, but just scrolling down, you can see they have a how to play, which is kind of what I explained, except in even more general terms of just you'll choose your hero, roll dice to activate your abilities. You can even upgrade them over time by spending kind of the currency in the game you get, combat points. You'll use action cards to help you manipulate your dice to get the results you want, and hopefully you will beat out the other player, take them down first.
Yeah. And then I think one thing that was noted as Ben was scrolling down, if you do have the other Dice Thrones, a cool thing about this, or a good thing about this, is that this set, this season, is fully compatible in terms of competition or gameplay against other season characters. So if you're looking to just expand your arsenal of characters to play against and play with, this will fully fit in. There's no needs to change any rules or fix anything or do anything different. It all compatibly fits together with those previous seasons, which is very nice and very convenient.
Yeah, and that'll be an exciting thing too. Like, if you just happen to like the original characters, you can play as one of those. But if your friend likes Marvel more, then they can choose one of these. And so getting into the heroes, there were videos posted leading up to the campaign, this Kickstarter campaign, videos posted by Man vs. Meeple, another YouTube channel, that basically were like 1 to 2 minute videos on each of the new characters being introduced here, giving you a very general idea of like their specialty or how they play different. And so if you guys are curious about that, I think I'll include the link to like the first one that they released, Captain Marvel. I'll include that in the description here to this video. But then from that one, you can look up the other ones by Man vs. Meeple to see, you know, if there are other characters here that you're more interested in learning about. But getting into the characters and kind of what John and I might have heard and thought were interesting about them, or thought were not as interesting. First, one of the first characters, Miles Morales, SpiderMan.
SpiderMan. How could you do a Marvel game without SpiderMan?
Yeah, and obviously this one with Spider-Verse, right? Trying to put him out there now instead of Peter Parker for so long. And so this one, this is what his player board looks like, his character's board, which is specific to this character if you choose him. And then he has his own deck of cards and a sideboard, or player leaflet is what they call it, that basically explains that character's special tokens, because each character has their own tokens that do their own effects. So this kind of explains it while you're playing and using this character. And then the character will have their combat dial, or combat point dial, which is the currency I'd mentioned in this game, and their health dial, and then their custom dice. Each one has their own 5 custom dice. And so it's basically rolling those dice to match the symbols for any one of these abilities to use that ability as your attack during your turn. And then your opponent might have these green abilities, which are defense ones, which they'll roll and hopefully try to land to mitigate some of the damage they're taking from you. And then this player board is actually in a trifold. So it's in a trifold, and the player board, the deck of cards, leaflet, dials, dice, all fit inside a custom games tray packaging for each of these characters, which is so gorgeous from season 2 and on, the way Roxley Games has done it. And I think you'll see pictures of that later too. But about Miles Morales Spider-Man, I think one of his main mechanics is I know he has this invisibility token, which in this game there are a lot of attacks that do undefendable damage, so you just don't get to defend it. It just kind of directly hits you. Where he's different in that he has this token that I guess allows him to still defend against undefendable damage. That was the main thing I caught, which was a small thing, but a little clever thematic thing for Miles Morales Spider-Man. I don't know if you have thoughts on this Spider-Man.
And then in terms of his other skills and abilities in a very Spider-Man-esque way, of course, he has his webs. That's another token that he's able to do, where when he webs up a character, it effectively allows him to be able to deal undefendable damage to a character versus just standard damage. Because obviously, if you're webbed up, can't really defend yourself. So gives him some extra fighting ability, and then also his comboing, right? So, right, in the Marvel universe, Spider-Man is known to be very agile. He moves around a lot. He's hitting things regularly. So he has that capacity to both offensively attack and then kind of combo and protect himself to go straight into defensive, to add additional offense if they were either unsuccessful or didn't defend themselves that way. You could potentially follow it up with more damage because they're like, haha, I already broke through your defense, so I can hit you again, kind of thing, right? So it's a very Spider-Man-esque feel to his gameplay.
So that's like 2 offensive attacks, right?
Yeah, 2 offensive attacks in one round versus what most characters only have 1.
Yeah,
so,
that's
and if they're
crazy.
Webbed, it's undefendable combo damage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting hearing like these specialties about these characters and how overpowered they might sound. Because that's a big thing, getting another attack in the same turn. Yeah. But I mean, it's got to all be balanced somehow.
It might be maybe he's deals less damage in total compared to other characters, which might be kind of the difference between him and others, because of his capacity to chain undefendable damage. He probably can't just like wipe you out in one hit and be like, sorry. That would be pretty overpowered. But Spider-Man, who knows?
And I think all of these have a click to and begin, meaning you can see what these look up close. So let me see if it actually shows it. Yeah. Oh yeah, so this is like a more of a view of all of his stuff all at once. So I'm hoping you guys can see this, my share screen. But yeah, so you can kind of see all the art, gorgeous art all over the place, even on the dials. I love the art in Dice Throne though. I think it just has such a pop to it and a sleekness to it. Even like each ability shows different artwork to show off what is actually happening.
And I was going to say, one of the interesting things about this Spider-Man, if you're looking at some of his abilities, this seems to be potentially a symbiotic Spider-Man version because of his Venom Shockwave and his Venom Punch, which is, if you know, from...
Oh, no, that's just his electricity.
His electricity?
Yeah, Miles Morales has electricity. Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
It Venom?
So I think they might call it that. So it's not. I think it's not what you're thinking.
Okay. I also haven't read the Ultimate series, so which is
I think it's not with the Venom
It
symbiote.
would have been interesting if they did that.
Yeah, there was a like in the FAQs part, it's kind of like people were asking, "Oh, are there going to be other characters?" And they can't say yet. I don't think they plan for that yet, but who knows if they can continue doing Marvel characters later. But yeah, so then going back, we go on to Scarlet Witch, who is also popular now from the Marvel movies and WandaVision. Her abilities are interesting because they are more of that, in a sense, like more from like the comics version of her powers of manipulating reality, where she can, one of her abilities here is this probability manipulation, which allows her to basically change how her dice roll the results on them, which is really important in this game because you're going to be trying to roll to match the symbols on here to do these abilities. So to control that is very powerful. And then she also has the reality warp, which allows her to even switch one of the opponent's dice with her own. And since the dice are custom to each character, that basically limits what the opponent can do on that turn, because then they don't have one of their original dice to roll whatever symbol they need. Yeah. So that's an interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's like a really strong skill, because it's just like, what then do you do? It limits them to maybe just trying to hit small straights, or like the straights that you can make in this game, but otherwise you're kind of stuck with not having your own dice, which is so key and so pivotal. And so it definitely does feel a lot more like what Scarlet Witch is in the comics, as he said, but definitely if you've been looking and being interested in like what is Scarlet Witch's true powers, with the cliffhanger of what's happened with WandaVision, this is a great way of seeing what she's so.
And then, of course, keep in mind the stuff we've been describing with these that are on the leaflet or the sideboard, with the probability manipulation, reality warping, and the comboing and webbing for Miles Morales Spider-Man. Those are all based on tokens that the characters need to get. So they don't just get to do this all the time. Or in that case, yeah, we would make them sound very overpowered. But, they have to do certain abilities to get these tokens, and then they can use them on a future turn to do these abilities. So there is a limitation still to it. And that's how the tokens work in this game. And so then going back, we have Thor, who has a Mjolnir token, holding his hammer that he can throw and do a little damage. But then a lot of his abilities then depend on if the Mjolnir token is with the opponent that he threw it at, or if he brings back Mjolnir, he gets electrokinesis tokens or electricity energy. And that can also boost his abilities too, if he has those kind of energy tokens on him.
Thor, the god of thunder, not the god of hammers. It's a really cool mechanic too, because as we were talking about, as a token, right? Most of the characters, as we were just saying, there's a token that you kind of use and you spend it and then it's used up. But with Thor, his token is all about being, like, how he's manipulating a singular token that stays, right? It's either with him or with the opponent, in either dealing a small amount of damage, as was mentioned, or doing some other additional major effects. And so in that way, it feels pretty reminiscent, or pretty kind of part of the character of Thor, which is actually a nice capture in this character creation. And I think is pretty unique compared to a lot of the other characters in the Dice Throne series.
And it will like take some planning too, right? Because as you can tell on the player board, he has certain abilities that let him throw Mjolnir and some that let him retrieve it. And so you kind of need to plan ahead and be a little lucky that you get it back or throw it at the times you want to get those additional boosts to your other abilities. And so yeah, that's Thor. And then going on, we have Black Widow. I think I'm most excited for her. I mean, I think this artwork looks great. Like the lighting and the coloring on it. Oh man. And then yeah,
also his favorite style.
Yeah, before this, John was pointing out that this was my favorite style of character in games, and I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." How is it my favorite, John? How does she play?
She's Batman.
She's Batman. Yep.
No, but basically, the style for Black Widow is her unique thing is that, as you can see, we've been talking about all these characters having their own player boards, right, with all of their abilities. Black Widow's unique because she actually has player card. Part of her player card deck is upgrades that she can increase the abilities that are on the board. So when she plays them, it replaces. You basically place the card on top of where that ability is, and you're basically making it an upgrade. So in effect, she's adding on new equipment and getting herself prepped up. And then based on the upgrades that you make or the or activating a certain ability, if you have a certain amount of those, it'll do additional effects to what you may have attacked with or what you may have done. So it's definitely kind of in that Black Widow vein. She is human. She doesn't have like superpowers like a lot of these other characters you've just shown, but she is like a super spy, right? So this is all about kind of gearing up, being prepared, and she also has a lot of skills and abilities that are about being a really well-trained, spy operative, right? Thinking you're James Bonds of the world, thinking you're other spy people, secret agents in all these shows, right? Of like fiction of the past, right? She's definitely in that vein of character. She also has a cool ability called the time bomb, and she can throw it on people, and you have to learn, like the players have to try to defuse them, otherwise they actually take straight damage from that if they don't use it effectively. So that's also a pretty fun mechanic for her as well.
So. So it's that part about the upgrades, right? And getting those quickly, because that's what her covert ops tokens let her do, basically drawing or looking for upgrade cards she wants. And so yeah, when John mentioned upgrade cards, like what they'll basically look like are cards in your deck that are the same ability that are on your character's board, but just called like Infiltrate 2 or Infiltrate 3. And so yeah, players, all characters can upgrade their abilities over time, but she's basically trying to do that quickly and get those upgrades out, because as John said, the more she has out, the more boosts she'll get overall. And so, yep, I think I like that kind of setting up, building up, kind of equipping kind of characters like Batman.
That's all right.
So that's Black Widow.
And you love the artwork. So
I do love this artwork. I think that looks so good. And then Doctor Strange, which we did talk about his artwork too.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this artwork?
So, I mean, it's mainly the top part. If you see this splash right here, he looks kind of funny. It's kind of a weird look, but his actual artwork in the actual board itself, if you look at his cards, overall, he has a really good like art style. It definitely feels very mystical. Definitely captures that aspect of Doctor Strange as being the Sorcerer Supreme, as we've seen more and more in his movies and the What If series, of just how much he's capable of. It's captured very well in here, but just that splash art looks kind of funky.
Yeah, and we do obviously like getting to mention the art for you guys to kind of see what we notice about it and if it appeals to you or not. And yeah, I do agree with John. There is this, you can see the difference in the splash art and on the actual player board. Yeah. It's like, this is like a kid.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that
it's a kid with beard.
Yeah, and then this is more understandably him as a real adult character. Yeah, and I think the other thing to notice is like in the starting video for this campaign, and maybe other ones you might find on YouTube, that I think as good as I think the art is overall on these components, it also does look weird when they're put into an animated little short, because it's like these still image versions of this nice art, and so then it comes off like a weird Saturday morning cartoon or kind of cheap Saturday morning cartoon look. And so it's good for all these components, just kind of weird in a animated way. But then, yeah, here is Doctor Strange's components.
Yeah.
And I do like all the kind of different artwork for the spells and such. And he plays very interestingly because some people have a passive ability on their board on the bottom left, which, you know, might be something about how much damage they can reduce automatically or what tokens they start with automatically. Where his is actually a space where you get to prepare spell cards from your hand. And so you'll actually be putting cards onto this spot over time, which then when you do other abilities that say cast a spell, you get to choose a spell that you prepared there. And I think that's like maybe one of the most unique, I think, mechanics they've included in Marvel Dice Throne. This separate deck of spells, which then become like another ability on top of an ability you're already doing on your turn.
Yeah. And it's also, as you can see here, as the example here, the fangs of Farala. It's not just like he prepares it and nothing happens, so he has to waste some time doing it. Typically, there's also an effect that, you know, benefits him either directly or affects the opponent player. So it's not completely just this like I have to waste some time doing this or waste an effect. You do get some benefit, you do get some bonus. So you're not entirely, you know, kind of defenseless while you're preparing your book of spells. So it's a really unique way. And so likely they're very massively powerful, or they have a lot of really strong effects or boosting of effects to the casting of your like the abilities that you're doing in the game. In addition, he has other, you know, tokens as well, but I definitely think the spells mechanic is most unique for him over all the other characters.
And I think that does make him more complex. My guess would be more complex than Thor, because I had mentioned Thor takes that planning ahead of where this one token is. But then for Doctor Strange, I think it'll be when do you prepare what spell, because each one then has a different effect when you prepare it and a different one when you actually cast it later. So that'll be even more of a timing kind of a thing. But they're all also generally good, right? So maybe whenever you do it would be good anyway.
Usually it's probably a good thing, but again, you still have to kind of plan it out, because it's also the thing about the dice rolling of this game too. You can't activate these skills and abilities unless you properly roll what you can to actually activate. So it's also
like something that lets you prepare or something that actually lets you cast.
Exactly. So that's the thinky part.
And so then coming back, we have, so yeah, he's a complexity of 5. So that might be the most out of all of these. We have Loki.
Mr. Loki.
Big character, people really enjoying nowadays too from the Marvel movies.
Thank you, Tom Hiddleston.
And so he has his trickiness, basically. Like, which I thought was an interesting way of doing it too, where he has this illusion ability where with these tokens, he basically, when he's being attacked, he can force the opponent to basically choose one of 3 random illusion cards that Loki has, like a little side deck of 3 cards, and they'll have different results on them. Basically a success, meaning like I think the opponent's attack was successful, or a partial success, or a fail. So I think that's just kind of an interesting way of doing thematic way of doing this, like illusion projection, throwing people off, deceiving people. But then it's also like a clever gameplay way of doing it with this small deck versus just like flip a coin or roll a dice 50-50, you know, like to have this deck, it allows you to not only have that chance in a certain way, but even include abilities with those partial success and fails.
Exactly. And I love the text that they put on the illusion, just as a fun note, is when you do the illusion ability and then the person has to choose between the 3, it says, you may suggest to the player what card they should select. Which is a very Loki thing to do.
Oh, yeah,
How
it does
do you
say that.
goad the person into which card they should be selecting, whether for or against their benefit?
Oh
He's
man.
great.
I feel like I feel like he'll be really annoying to deal with to play against.
But the thing about the illusions is he only, right, as we said, you can only have so many illusion tokens. So
Yeah, so he has to somehow
it's not like
build
every
up the
time you
ability.
attack him,
Yeah.
it's a choice. There will be a point you can burn through them all, probably.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm. Okay.
good old Loki.
Loki. And I think this might be the last one, Captain Marvel.
No, there's one more after.
Oh, we do. Oh, yeah, that's right. But Captain Marvel.
Yep.
I think this one actually was the first one that Man vs. People revealed. I had mentioned their first video for this campaign. And I think it was a good choice because it really has, I think, the look on it, even though I don't really care about the character. Maybe that's because of the Marvel movie. But I think the look of it is just like pops a lot. Yeah. And the color is done really well, especially since it's like these primary colors. It doesn't come off like super bright and gaudy, but it's done in a very well balanced way with good contrast. But I think gameplay wise, I think she's pretty straightforward, where she's mainly trying to build up her energy, and then while she has it, it allows her to do more damage on top of her normal attacks. Or she, I think, builds up her cosmic flare, I believe, and it lets her do just one damage to all opponents during her upkeep at the start of her turn. So I think it's kind of basic stuff of kind of like a very offensive character.
Yeah. She's definitely kind of your standard, like she feels very much like a standard. I build up my strength over time, I hit hard, and I can defend myself pretty well kind of character. So, but as we said, I think for her character, this is definitely showing more of the cosmic activity. Because I would say even if your only exposure to Marvel is through the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I honestly still feel like Captain Marvel still hasn't truly been revealed as a character throughout the series and throughout the shows. We kind of saw a taste of it in the Endgame of Avengers, but we still haven't really and truly seen Captain Marvel as like a kind of true force of who she is as a superhero, right? So I think this is kind of a showing of that here, and something again to look forward to in future comics or series if you're interested in reading or learning more about her character. So, but definitely all cosmic, right? All in space. All of her skills show her spacey.
And so then I think the next one is the last character. Didn't mean to cut him off. Black Panther.
Panther has awoken.
So yes, Black Panther was the second character from this that Man vs. Meeple revealed, and I actually think it actually looks really good. I think the style to it looks really nice. Art wise, I think John mentioned before this that he's just in a full suit. So
how do you ruin a full suit mask guy if you can't do that? Come on.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a sleek suit. It's a sleek suit.
Yeah, whereas with Doctor Strange or other characters where their face is revealed, sure, facial features, learn how to draw those well. Yep. This is just all in a suit. But it does look good though. It is sleek, like you mentioned. And I think the big thing for him, which I also thought might make him overpowered, but depending obviously on how they balance all the abilities and damage he can do, is following the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He has this kinetic energy ability where basically whenever he takes damage, he builds up kinetic energy. And certain attacks that he does also generate kinetic energy. And so basically the more he has, the more he actually just does more damage. And eventually when it reaches its max limit of tokens of 8 here, it discharges and does a big attack against an enemy automatically. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of also setting him up to be a very aggressive character, right? Just kind of like keep attacking, hopefully getting kinetic energy, just being fine taking hits because that does give you kinetic energy, and letting that make you do more damage and eventually do a big hit at some point.
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting. Ironically, I would say he, for me, probably seems like the simplest, straightforward gameplay character out of all of the characters. He's even more straightforward than Captain Marvel because it's like you don't even have to try to gain the energy. You just gain energy. You attack things, you gain energy. You get hit, you just gain energy. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. But to that point, it's definitely it's an interesting character because it's like, how do you balance how much damage you're taking? Because obviously, if you take too much damage, you're going to die in the game, right? So you have to be able to, like, I feel like with this character, it's more of like you got to hit him hard, and you don't hit him with a bunch of small hits, because if you do, he will discharge and you'll be skirted hit back by him. So you have to try to hit him with the big one attacks, right? So.
And yeah, and so then he does have like a little bit of, with his vibranium related abilities or cards, to at certain points reduce damage. So that's like maybe his basic stopgap of how to not just die.
Not just die after a couple hits, right? So it'll be, it's a pretty unique way. I almost feel like he's, if you think of him as other characters, kind of like a berserker or something like a brawler that goes, which again, to his character in the show, in the MCU as well as in the comics and such, he's definitely a close-handed fighter. So he definitely has to be able to take hits and then dish them right back out. So.
And then something I didn't mention during our very quick gameplay overview was every character also has an ultimate ability, which is basically an unblockable, unstoppable ability that does a bunch of damage and probably gets each character a lot of the tokens that they want to gather for abilities. But that only happens when you can roll all 5 of your dice to be the 6 number or 6 side of the dice. So 5 6s is your ultimate. And then obviously they have characteristic, thematic meaning behind it, like Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever.
And so you guys can discover the ones that the other characters have and enjoy that thematic touch to them. And so those are all the characters and our kind of thoughts on like how they all play differently, their unique mechanics this time around, and even their artwork. And so now you can see how it'll be produced, just kind of look of how this game will be released from this Kickstarter. And it actually is being produced in this limited edition battle chest. And so I think that's kind of like the only pledge level. Yeah, the only pledge level for this campaign. But it is a limited edition version of it. And so you can see here, like I mentioned, each character has their own custom games tray to hold all their pieces. And then they'll all fit inside this battle chest. And I think new this time is their trays will be matching their colors. So it has a little more, easily identifiable detail to them. And it also include this little side wall in the box, I think. And I think that's more of to make the box sturdy itself. It's kind of like this custom tray inside to hold each character tray. And so, yeah, this is what the battle chest looks like inside. On the side, it'll even show the character portraits so you can know where to place them in your box. And this is what the inside of a given character tray looks like. The 2 wells for the cards. Then you have the dials in the middle. The character-specific tokens in a little well there, and then a slot for all their custom dice. And it's so pretty seeing that in real life.
Yeah. And I was going to say, one of the nice things, as you can see here, and I know, Ben, we've talked about this a lot when you've sleeved your cards. It's great that they actually added a specific sleeve section for sleeved cards, because anytime you add sleeves, it's going to change the sizing of your cards. And so typically when distributors have created these kinds of things, a lot of times they create it very specifically for just the cards by themselves. But when you see companies and the distributors, or like the producer, the production, take that into account, always a really nice thing.
Yeah, I always appreciate that as someone who loves to sleeve my cards to keep them safe and make them feel nice. Yeah, that it can fit, it's great. And then there will be a promo pack included with this. So basically an extra card for each of the characters' decks, just if you want the promos. And then this will also have a exclusive metal Mjolnir token. So replacing, and it is actually like, it's not shown here, but it's actually a flat metal token because it is meant to actually replace the cardboard token that comes with Thor that we talked about, that he has that Mjolnir token. So you can use this metal one instead, and it's exclusive to this Kickstarter.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, and then there's just some add-ons which are typical that they've done for their other seasons too, like custom sleeves for each of the heroes, which I'm pretty sure I will get because it looks so nice just having like the artwork with the character. And it's nice because each character is always just going to have their own deck of cards, right? It's not like other games where like, oh, like a trading card game where, oh, we're going to make a new deck, so I need to take this sleeve off this one and put it on this one or anything like that. It's always going to be these cards with the character. Mm-hmm. So putting their own sleeves onto them makes it just look nicer.
Although it's sad, it has the
I know it has this Doctor Strange. I just noticed that when I scrolled down here. Like the Thor is kind of weird too. Yeah. But this Black Panther looks really good.
Black Panther one looks good. The SpiderMan looks good. Scarlet Witch, Black Widows looks good.
Yeah.
Loki's is not bad.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I do like the effect on Scarlet Witch's, like her magic doing this warping.
The altering of reality.
Yeah, I do like that part to it. And Captain Marvel's, it's okay. It's kind of generic.
Yeah. We've seen that artwork style before.
And then there's playmats that you can get, which don't actually have any functional element to the game. Like there's no like space telling you where to place your cards because you're all doing it on your player board anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's just more like if you really enjoyed the artwork that they have for this season, they have like the all together ones, and then they have ones for each individual character that you can add on. And then collapsible dice tray and the bundle for it all. And so then the last thing I would want to point out, I think in this, so there is that metal Mjolnir token. You can see it is flat, so it does work and fit in the Thor tray. The last thing I'll point out is for those of you who would prefer to wait, which I know like my cousin Daniel did. He did enjoy this game, but obviously didn't want to just shell out so much now for this exclusive version, and maybe didn't want to get the huge giant battle chest, which is admittedly hard to take anywhere. So that's why that's a game I prefer having people over and then playing at my place. They will be releasing retail versions of this season like they've done with the previous seasons. In the previous seasons, they've released basically kind of like dual boxes or 1v1 boxes. So they all come with 2 of the characters from that season. So you just get one set, you have 2 characters, you can immediately play with someone just with those characters. And so they'll be doing that with these 2. At the very bottom, they revealed the retail plans. So they'll be releasing 2 1v1 boxes. So one with Black Panther and Captain Marvel. So you just get that and you can play, or you can just get the one with Black Widow versus Doctor Strange and you can play, or they'll have a box that'll have the remaining 4 characters. Mm-hmm. So this is just in case you guys would prefer to wait and even just pick up a much cheaper and, portion of this game to try it out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's their retail plans, and just want to point out that option for you guys who want to wait on that instead. And so those are our thoughts on this Marvel Dice Throne Kickstarter, already at 1.3 million, and still has.
It went up 10K while we were.
And it still has 2 weeks to go. So yeah, if you guys are interested, feel free to check this out, and those Man vs. Meeple videos that I mentioned that I will include one of the links for in the description. And so with that said, thank you for watching. If you guys found this interesting, helpful, hope you'll share this with people you play board games with, friends, family. I hope you'll consider subscribing to this YouTube channel and following us on Instagram at I Got Board Game. Until next time, we will see you then. Aye.
I